This is Ralph Brandt from the Fireside. Today, I just heard that AOL is ceasing operations sometime in the near future. This service started in 1995 and has been there for 30 years. They're ending their dial up service, with the modems that screamed when they started. Actually, they were adjusting both ends, negotiating is the term, to see what speed they would run over that junk telephone line. And the speeds got up to somewhere around 19.2 kilobits, which is, in today's world, dead dog slow. AOL was the beginning of home internet. One of the things that happened during those early years when it was rolling out, we had one telephone line in the house until actually two things happened. One was I had dial-up access at work and needed it to do some maintenance. And the second was AOL. We got a second phone line. And many, many, many people did that. The number of homes in the nation that had two phone lines went through the roof. Places that were very comfortable with a couple hundred pair cable coming in suddenly needed more pairs. A pair is used for each phone line. Each phone line takes two wires. And there was a lot of copper being strung with plastic on it to support those lines. The companies also did some things called multiplexing. The term T1 or DS1 would allow a circuit with it would allow 24 phone lines to be multiplexed on it. And AOL was largely responsible for a lot of that. With that happening, the cable companies and others got into the act with high-speed internet. And as that happened, AOL's number of dial-ups started to diminish. And in addition to that, the second phone lines started to disappear. And then even the first phone lines into homes started to disappear with cell phones. At one time, most homes in the United States had one home phone line. It was up to around 97% at one point had one line or more. Today, it's down around 40%. The phone company terrestrial lines are about half of what they were, actually a little less than half of what they were in the late 1990s and very early 2000s in the AOL heyday. We went to a higher speed telephone line, and then we went to high speed with Comcast. I don't think it was Comcast when we went. I think it was Suscom. The other day, I was standing on a street corner as a fire policeman, and I happened to look up at a telephone cable above me. I look at things. I get bored. I do looking at things. And I see a gray, not black, telephone cable. It's about 2 inches across. And I recognized it. That's the telephone cable that was invented around 1880. It was many small wires in it, surrounded by a lead sheath. That lead sheath is somewhere around 1/6 of an inch in thickness, which means that a 2-inch cable will have a circumference of a little over 6 inches, and each inch of cable will have a cubic inch of lead. Each mile of that has tons of lead. That lead is out in the open, exposed, and leaching out into the soil. Now, it's very slow, but there's a lot of lead there and it's coming out. By the way, to insulate those wires, they didn't have plastic. They would take each wire. Now, there's thousands of these. In a 1,200 pair cable, you got 2,400 of these wires. And they would fold, now it's done with machine, they would fold a strip of paper over the wire and then aggregate them, and put the lead around them. These cables were problematic. I ran into them. These cables were used up until somewhere around the 70s. They were still being installed. At that time, plastic insulation on individual wires and heavy black plastic sheath went on it. If you see a telephone cable, by the way, telephone cables are thick. There's usually 1, 2, or 3 of them on a set of poles. The poles are shorter than the power poles. You can identify them. The only other thing that's going to be there is either coaxial cable or fiber cable, or like Comcast or internet. But if you see one that's gray and about 2 inches in diameter, some of them are a little smaller, that's a lead telephone cable. And they're still out there. There's one of them hanging from York at least to Dover. I haven't explored further. And that's not the only one I've seen. We've got a lot of those hanging out there. Now, AT&T and the others who strung those cables aren't taking them down. Most of that wire is staying up because it's not worth taking down. Somewhere along the line, if we're going to get lead out of our environment, we need to start pushing these people to start taking the lead out of our environment. Now, you'll say, well, but what about those cables being used? Won't they have to be replaced? Back in 2000, I was up on the top of a mountain helping to get a T1 circuit into a mountaintop communications system. And we're looking we needed 2 of them, so we needed 4 pair. And I was looking at the circuit list of what circuits and what were used. And almost everything going over that mountain was full. I believe it was PA 44 going across the mountain. Almost everything was full. Today, if you went up there and took a look, you would probably find that over half of those pairs are no longer in use. There may be whole cables in this area that have nothing on them. And one of the bad things is, if that lead sheath breaks a small hole and it starts aspirating moist air in and out day and night, the paper will get wet, the pairs will short, and individual pairs will go bad. Eventually, you'll have 30% of the pairs not being good. There used to be one of these across a road near my home, and they would have tanks of compressed nitrogen out, feeding it into the cable to dry it out. This has been a problem. I've seen it. I worked this kind of stuff from a different perspective, but I knew what was going on. We need to start looking at getting some of this stuff down. Some of the cable companies put up cable in the 80s, 70s. And when they replaced the cable with something else, the old cable's still hanging there. We've got a lot of junk up in the air. Now, the worst of it is the lead cable. Most of the coax was either plastic sheathing or, in some cases, an aluminum tube. And you can see these. I can look at them going down the road, and I can pretty well tell you what's up there. Fiber actually looks different than copper telephone cable that's plastic, even though they're both black. But this is something I just ran into. I'm going to try to put a picture in this video whenever I edit it, showing the example, looking up the pole, and you can see the gray thing. I also have another picture that I found of a piece of cable cut out, showing what it looked like when they cut it out and split the lead to take a look at it. It was a technology that in 1880 was the only way. Up until about the 1950s or 60s, plastics weren't good enough to do it. I look at it being put up differently than I'd look at it being left up. An interesting little study. AOL going away kind of tagged this for me. This is Ralph Brandt from the Fireside.